Merry Christmas, ladies.
Merry Christmas, Mr. Bublé.
Are you ready to sing a little jingle bells?
Yes.
Jingle bells, jingle all the way. Oh, what fun it is to ride in a one-horse open sleigh. Jingle bells, jingle all the way. Oh, what fun it is to ride in a one-horse open sleigh. Dashing through the snow in a one-horse open sleigh. O'er the fields we go, laughing all the way. Bells on bobtail ring, making spirits bright. What fun it is to ride and sing a sleighing song tonight.
Jingle bells, just jingle bells, jingle all the way. Oh, what fun it is to ride in a one-horse open sleigh. Jingle bells, just jingle bells, jingle all the way.
Merry Christmas, Happy Hanukkah, Happy Holidays, Happy New Year, all of that, all of the above. To all of you listening to the Great Lakes Divide podcast with Blue Ellie Tom Crawford, I'm Ryan Schuling. The sound you hear coming in, going out, the holiday festive sounds of the Record Lounge in Rio Town. Special holiday hours, holiday offers, and holiday cheer from Heather Frary and her entire staff. Inviting you to join them, if you can, between now and the holiday season. And whenever it ends for you, it could be days after Christmas. You're still looking for gifts after the holiday season ends. New Year's Day, you can get anything you want. Music galore at the Record Lounge in Rio Town. They have all the newest, latest releases each and every Friday, plus all the all-time greats as well. Maybe even a Christmas album here and there you can dig up, and the hi-fi stereo equipment to play it. It goes through an electrical engineer. It clears through that process, and so you know you're getting the very best, approved by Heather Frary and the Record Lounge. Quality work, quality products. They stand by their name, and if they don't have it for you, they'll order it for you, specially 24 to 48 hour turnaround on that. Just take 496 downtown Lansing, Washington South to the Rio Town Marketplace, and you'll find it right there in the front window. That's the Record Lounge in Rio Town. Well, a full docket for us on this Sunday morning that we're recording. Tom Crawford back from Ann Arbor and Michigan's win over Presbyterian. A little bit of somber news coming out of that from an injury standpoint. We'll get to that in a little bit. 86-44, the final score as the Wolverines take down, yes, they are called the Blue Hose. 86-44, the final score there. Michigan State victorious over Eastern Michigan in a big way. Get some thoughts on that to start off the podcast. And then a little bit later on, stay tuned. We'll have our bowl previews for both Michigan State and the new Era Pinstripe Bowl against Wake Forest. It's coming up this weekend ahead. And then, of course, the Citrus Bowl, Michigan and Alabama. So all of that to get to. We start with Michigan State. 101-48 winners over Eastern Michigan at Breslin on Saturday night. Cassius Winston, well, you could say he looked like his old self, whatever that is. We talked about that with Sean Windsor, Free Press from our last podcast. But it looked like he was having fun. It looked like he was locked in. He was 7 of 14 from the floor, 21 points. 7 assists in this one, and just 1 turnover. Michigan State did have 16 turnovers as a team, but a lot of big things coming out of this one. For me, in particular, the improved play of Aaron Henry. He had 12 points, 9 rebounds, 6 assists, 2 block shots, stayed within himself, and looked more, the word I would use, is fluid. He was not as tentative. He was more aggressive, but not forcing the issue. Only had 2 turnovers of his own. And I guess, Tom, as I bring you in for the conversation, that was my biggest takeaway in this, is that, one, Michigan State didn't let the pedal off the metal. They were tenacious defensively throughout this game, and Aaron Henry was markedly improved. You could just tell the way that he was playing. Something clicked for him, and for Spartan fans, they got to hope that that's going to be the case going forward.
Yeah, this whole game, Ryan, in my estimation, and I was watching it on one of my monitors, watching Ohio State, Kentucky, more focused on that. That was a more competitive game, as well as the Patriots and the Buffalo Bills. I was going all at it last night on TV, but I thought this was a great game for Michigan State. Yeah, Eastern Michigan is not a juggernaut, but a decent team. I mean, this is a team that has a credible schedule. They beat, Northeastern, Northeastern is a decent basketball program. So there was a lot of pluses when you have all players except 2 score. I mean, 13 players, whatever, score. That's a good thing. Aaron Henry, you nailed it. That is the guy. That's the dude that is going to have to deliver for Michigan State when they get into Big Ten play with that Illinois Michigan matchup at home to start things off. And so the fact that he had, kind of a re-coming out party for the 1920 campaign was certainly good for Michigan State fans.
Not a single Eastern Michigan scorer in double figures in this game. They were 3 of 29 from 3. The Eagles had struggled shooting coming in, but their guy off the bench who will shoot from anywhere, Thomas Benelli, well, he didn't shoot much better than Tom Crawford or myself in this game. He was 1 of 10, all of them from 3, some of them from about 40 feet away from the basket, but 9 misses, it's just not going to count for much. And so Michigan State's defense put the clamps down. The Eagles just 24% from the floor on the game, 16 of 67. They couldn't even hit free throws. They got 30 of those, but only hit 13, 43% from the stripe. Meanwhile, Michigan State much better from distance. They shot 50% from 3, 15 of 30 overall, including 4 of 8 from Cassius Winston. And we talk about Aaron Henry's improved performance. Foster Loyer, Tom, comes off the bench with 16 minutes. He's able to spell Cassius, only plays 26 minutes in this one. Granted, the score had a lot to do with that. But Loyer hits 3 of 4 threes. We saw him do this. We've talked about it often at the high school level. He's the best free throw shooter in the history of the MHSAA and one of the better three-point shooters as well. He contributes 13 points off the bench. More importantly to me, it's him maintaining the flow and the structure of the offense without turning the ball over, without big runs going against them like we saw in the previous game where it was like Michigan State had to call a timeout just to settle the waters as he couldn't hold down the fort with Cassius Winston out of the game. In this game, he was able to do it. Granted, again, you always consider the competition, but at least encouraging after, the Northwestern swing that we saw there in Evanston when Loyer came in, you could almost pinpoint it on the fact that Loyer was in and Winston was out. Foster Loyer giving them 15, 16 quality minutes. That could be big going forward, Tom.
It's good in this regard, okay, to have Foster Loyer consistent against let's call it average or marginal competition, and then see if he can bracket creep it up to the higher level competition, which we have not seen. Because anytime the big lights go on when you're playing the Louisvilles of the world or whatever they've done in his 2-year past here, he has not showed up. But you got to be consistent against teams that he's good at, and he's good at MAC level competition. He's good at against a Northwestern, which are one of the top. Or the bottom 2 or 3 teams in the Big Ten. Now the challenge for Foster is can he take that up a level when he goes against Illinois? Can Foster Loyer, is he serviceable against Illinois? We don't know that answer.
We don't, and we will find that out in relatively short order. My biggest concern, again, is with him maintaining and establishing tempo, consistency offensively, not turning the ball over. But I even saw it a bit against Eastern Michigan, is his ability to hold his own defensively. Who can he guard, really, man-on-man, as Michigan State is, want to do? That's going to be the more difficult challenge. And again, quality minutes out of Loyer equals a fresher Cassius Winston down the stretch. If he could just come in, we're talking after a TV timeout type deal in under 12, let's say, and not let things get away from the Spartans onto the under 8 timeout and do that in both halves. Boom, right there, you got what you need out of him, and you got Cassius Winston with just a little bit of a breather so he doesn't have to play 36 to 40 minutes every single game out, because that will take its toll late in the season in March. There's only so many miles that Winston's going to be able to put on that odometer and remain at top peak performance. Michigan State had balanced scoring in this one. Winston the leader with 21, as I mentioned, but double-digit scores in Henry with 12, Xavier Tillman with 11. He had 7 rebounds to add to that. Marcus Bingham Jr. with 10 points in 11 minutes, also had 6 boards. And we mentioned Foster Loyer's 13. Now, Julius Marble had 9 points in 9 minutes. He had 5 rebounds. Thomas Kithier had 6 boards. And the Spartans out-rebounded Eastern Michigan on the whole 51-41. I know that's a big statistic that Tom Izzo consistently looks at when he's handed the scorecard after each and every game. So Michigan State with this tune-up, no surprise here. I think the margin might have been surprising, especially the fact that they outscored Eastern Michigan by even more in the second half than in the first half. 101-48 the final there, as the Spartans improved to 9-3 on the season, and they have one more tune-up option here to close out calendar year 2019. That'll be this coming Sunday against Western Michigan. They'll have the holidays off. Tom Izzo said this team needs a break, a breather, mentally, psychologically, emotionally, physically. He even said he himself needs these next 4 days off, and that is what they'll have. Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday all off. They'll get back to practice on Thursday for that Sunday game against the Broncos. That'll be a 9 p.m. Eastern start on Big Ten Network, and then it's into Big Ten play, as Tom touched on, Illinois to start things off. That's on Thursday, January 2. That's an 8 p.m. tip on FS1. Before that weekend's game, Sunday, January 5th, everybody pointing to this one, as number 14 Michigan will be in town at Breslin. That'll be televised on CBS. So final thought, looking at Michigan State right now, Tom, as they have this one more tune-up option against Western Michigan, and what you think they need to do, approve, establish as they enter the meat of the schedule in Big Ten play.
Well, obviously match the intensity level and the efficiency level that they did against Eastern Michigan. I mean, I don't care who you're playing. You can get a big plus out of beating down a not spectacular opponent. I mean, Michigan got their game going against Houston Baptist earlier in the non-conference slate that got them some efficiency momentum into going down to the battle for Atlantis. It was one of those games that, hey, everything was clicking. So it's not all, what do they get out of this moment? I mean, and so they got to duplicate what they did against Eastern Michigan. They got to do that against Western and get ready. And get ready for Big Ten play. You know, talking to some of these Michigan players last night, the ones that were hopping on planes last night to have that 4-day hiatus, just like Michigan State, that is invaluable. Just hearing those players talk about being able to go home, and I'm sure this is matched at Michigan State, the same level, just going home and getting a refresh, a reboot, including the coach. That's a good thing. So the perfect timing. The schedules lay out perfect, I think, for both Michigan State having this whole week off right now. Mm-hmm. Some other teams are playing a little bit sooner, and I think that's problematic. If they do that, this is really good for Michigan and Michigan State.
Yeah, especially with the travel that both teams have done. I mean, Michigan State goes to Maui, to Hawaii for their invitational. Michigan goes to the Bahamas. They come back. They have to turn around, play that road game at Louisville. There's been a lot of back and forth for these Wolverines. So, yeah, these next few days off are going to be critical, and especially in the evaluation of really the dark cloud that comes out of this game. The only thing that could, in a game against a team like Presbyterian, where you know you're going to win, it's mop-up duty, 86-44 the final from Chrysler. Tom Crawford was there, but the overarching concern, Isaiah Livers, the nature of his injury, what happened. It happened relatively early. We'll get Tom's take on this in just a moment, but here's head coach Juwan Howard after the game talking about the injury to Isaiah Livers.
Do you have an update on Isaiah's status?
No, I do not. I do not have any update.
We were told muscle strain after the game. Do you know the specific muscle that he might have strained during that dunk attempt?
Man, I wish I was a doctor. I can tell you exactly which muscle it was, but I have no idea. Mm-hmm. I'm just praying that it's not a serious injury, and tomorrow hopefully he will feel better. But I trust we have a great medical team that's going to take good care of him and give us also the proper advice that's needed to help us find answers.
You mentioned you hope it's not too serious. What's your level of concern right now?
I'm always concerned about each and every player. I'm concerned, about Cole. I'm concerned about Franz being under the weather. I'm concerned about Brandon.
Livers only plays 3 minutes in this game. Michigan gets 3 double-digit scorers. Eli Brooks, again, he's been up and down this season, hit 3 of 5 from 3, 6 of 11 overall, 16 points for him. John Teskey, no problems for him, 15 points and 7 boards. And David DeJulius off the bench. And again, these are two guys, DeJulius and Brandon Johns, that Tom's pointed to give the Wolverines the depth they need on a consistent basis. DeJulius delivers 12 points in 23 minutes, including 4 of 7 from 3. And this was a big separator in the game. Michigan decent from 3, 11 for 27, 41%. Presbyterian, much like Eastern Michigan struggled against Michigan State, could not hit the broadside of a barn. They were 3 of 20 from 3. That's 15%, just 28% from the floor in total. Meanwhile, Michigan shoots 53% from the floor overall, 28 of 53. But let's start with Isaiah Livers, Tom, what you saw when he suffered the injury and where it stands now in your mind.
Well, ironically, it was right in front of me. You know where the media level sits at Michigan. We're up in the upper bowl. We got kicked up there several years ago, and so. But I have friends in high places. One of my fraternity brothers sits on court side, invited me to come down. So I went down there and sat in the first half. So I was literally right at kind of near the free throw line, court side on that side of the court, and I saw Isaiah come flying down there. He was going in for a layup or a dunk. And the pain in his face, on that abdominal strain. You could tell. He even put out a sound. I could see there was some pain going on. And I looked at my buddy right next to me. We looked at each other and we said, "This is not good." And he kind of tried to wince through the pain, shot his free throws to obligatory free throws, and then he sat down the rest of the game. Obviously, once again, this was just under the 17-minute mark. And post game, as the quote indicated from Juwan, there's a level of concern. And I've talked to a couple of former players about it since that time. Abdominal strain is like somewhat like a high ankle sprain. It could be one of those lingering things that just take forever. The good side of it is I would obviously not play him against Lowell, Mass. next Sunday. They have a 2:00 tip at Chrysler. And so your whole medical staff goal is to get Isaiah Livers ready for January 5th when Michigan comes to the Breslin Center to play Michigan State. So it's a 2-week project there, and we're going to probably learn more today. But that was a takeaway from the game. Again, beating up a bad team, and a lot of good things, as we mentioned, just like with Michigan State beating Eastern Michigan, although Presbyterian is far inferior to Presbyterian. Other than Presbyterian, let's pay homage to Presbyterian. That was a college that Bo Schembechler got his first college football assistant coaching job. So it'll forever be in close to my heart for that reason.
Is that why they were on the schedule, that tie-in?
No, I don't know. It's a small school in South Carolina. Clemson beat them by 30, and Clemson's not that good.
Right.
But, so I'll keep eyes on that Livers thing. I think we might even learn more today or tomorrow about that. But there was a level of concern, as there should be, because Isaiah Livers is a prominent player for the Michigan basketball team.
There's no question about that. And, again, against these teams like Presbyterian, UMass Lowell, you're just trying to get out healthy. You know you're going to get a win. That's just almost a foregone conclusion in this if you just show up. And that's what happened against the Blue Hose of Presbyterian. But Isaiah Livers, until that Sunday matchup against Michigan State, Tom pointed out he's got 2 weeks, abdominal strain. Who knows? They might learn a lot more in these 1 to 2 days after the strain to see the degree of the strain. And the only thing they can really treat it, they can go with heat and cold, and rest and relaxation is really the only thing that's going to bring it back to full strength. And whether or not he'll be available at Breslin remains to be seen. I would have to be optimistic, though. It'd be just the nature of this injury. I'd rather have, I guess, an abdominal strain than the high ankle sprain Tom talked about. But this is definitely something to keep an eye on for Michigan fans out there, again, as he was only able to contribute 3 minutes in this game. Outside of that, Tom, let's just take this, and I hate to paint this picture, but worst case scenario, what Isaiah Livers brings to the table for Michigan and what the Wolverines do without him.
Well, without him, they have their most multi-dimensional player. Without question, you have great leadership in the third-year guy. You got a leaner, meaner Isaiah Livers than last year. He does everything. He rebounds, he runs the floor, he defends. He's a glue guy, in my opinion, and his personality. He's such an engaging guy, just about to anybody who meets this fella, and his players love him. So yeah, that would be a huge absence if that's the case. But you have other different combinations that you could pull in there. Obviously, Brandon Johns would be that guy. Now, he was out all week. He was sick all week.
Yeah.
And he didn't play. So, and he's the guy that everybody's, excited about, this, the second-year guy that's all of a sudden this dominant hustle player, high-energy guy. So you have David DeJulius and Brandon Johns can squeeze in there in different combinations. Teskey played much better, albeit against lesser competition. And so he's a vital guy. And then Franz has got his shooting a little bit, his stroke has got to be consistent when Big Ten play starts. Eli Brooks had a bad game against Oregon, much better against this game. He had 25 minutes. So a lot of depth. That's the plus side of Michigan. But replacing Isaiah Livers would be not a good thing to have to do. I'll just say that.
Yeah, you figure, hoping, of course, that Brandon Johns comes back healthy, and they've got basically a full week here before UMass Lowell comes to Chrysler. That'll be on Sunday the 29th. That'll be a 2 p.m. tip-off on FS1. That Brandon Johns would be the one to be inserted into that starting lineup in the place of Livers for that game, and hopefully only that game. But that shortens the bench a bit, of course. Castleton's a guy that's going to get significant minutes, most likely, and especially an uptick if Livers is out. DeJulius off the bench. match, and I like the combination that Tom talks about. If they go small and they put maybe DeJulius in with Simpson, again, the numbers game that they're going to have to play minus Livers, this could make for some interesting matchups and force Michigan maybe into more of a diverse attack. Focusing on Franz Wagner for a moment here, Tom, I mean, not a lot you can read out of a game, again, that they had in control basically at halftime. He only played 17 minutes, only took 3 shots. What is left for Wagner in terms of tapping into what he has from an energy and stamina standpoint, where he maybe started a little bit behind the curve because of the injury to start the season, and whether or not you feel he'll be up to speed for that game in East Lansing against Michigan State?
Yeah, I think he will. I mean, this was one of these games. You can't even take any. It was difficult to do a takeaway on this because he didn't see a lot of minutes. I think this was a game. I mean, this game got so out of hand so quickly. So it didn't surprise me that he only had 17 minutes. It was a great opportunity to get other guys in the program, get them on the playing floor. I mean, Juwan says, I want to play all 15. And to do that right before the holidays, sending these kids home, hey, I got some playing time, Mom and Dad. I thought that was key. So I don't grasp anything out of this game. I thought Franz shot well against Oregon. I think he's going to be just fine. Having him play a fluid game, I love that term fluidity, where you just do things seamlessly. And I think he's finding that. He's still adjusting from international ball into the college game. And I'm not so disappointed that it's taken an adjustment, because I'd like to see Franz 2 years here. I mean, it's you're trying to floor plan your whole personnel, I mean, from a fan standpoint. And so maybe the progression it would be nice if it wasn't one of these jump out of the gate, Iggy Brasdeikis, where he's a one and done. So, and I think he's a 2-year guy, and I'm fine with his progress so far.
Now, we're not going to say his name probably a whole lot going forward, but I don't know. I mean, a senior from Onstead in Austin Davis, who contributes 7 points, 8 rebounds, 3 block shots in 17 minutes. I mean, with Livers out, is this a guy that could get quality minutes up front when Michigan might be lacking in that department a little bit?
Yeah, I talked to Austin actually after the game. He was one of the 3 players that spoke with us. It was just one of those games where you could choose a lot of different guy, and Cole Basham was another one that would. Mm-hmm. This is all new territory for those two. But Austin, I asked Austin, was he disappointed the fact he didn't get into the Oregon game, and after he'd played so well. I think it was against Carolina and also in the Bahamas, and also he played very well against Iowa. But he's just one of these positive attitude guys. Whatever the situation meshes into what I bring to the table, and there was no waffling on that. And so I think we're going to see more. What I like about Austin Davis is that Colin kind of has this need to put the ball on the floor to make that pivot move, and Austin just uses his hips, he uses his shoulders. 2 hands on a ball and puts it back up. And so I like fundamentally him, and I think he's going to be a vital guy when we really get into the physical Big Ten play. And that starts with Michigan State on January 5th. I think we're going to see more of Austin Davis.
We talked, Tom, about the time off and how much Michigan State needed it and how much they'll benefit from it. A lot of that's going to be between the ears and off the court. For Michigan, with their schedule, with the travel, with everything that we talked about, the injury to Livers being most significant among this, but with the week off and especially the several days off in a row for the holidays, without practice, without having to get out there, getting that time to rest and recover, which player or players do you think that benefits the most for Michigan?
Well, being, Captain Obvious would be Isaiah Livers. But, I think John Teske is one, because I think John really needs to challenge himself as he ponders this Big Ten play here his senior year. I think that this is his moment in time to really not just, to end his career very, on a high level, but, set himself up for the NBA. And he's got to play well for Michigan to win. And I think he's the guy that's got to bring it every game, no matter what the style of play. I remember a little frustrated with the reaction. Well, John wasn't in there the last 10 minutes. He only had 2 fouls. He did not play in the last 2 minutes of the Oregon game because the game didn't really fit him. I mean, all games should fit John Teske in my mind. And I hope that he bridges that gap, if you will, and plays well. Because, and Michigan fans were already, they're not blowing up Teskey, but they're all excited about Michigan landed a top 38 recruit in the nation, Hunter Dickinson out of DeMatha High, who's 7'2". So Michigan's fine at center for the next few years to come, but I hope that John Teskey has a great Big Ten season, his last, these last 3 months, and it's up for him to really focusing this thing through as he goes home and takes a break here from Big Ten basketball.
Once again, last non-conference game on the slate for Michigan. That'll be Sunday the 29th, a 2 p.m. Eastern time start on FS1 from Chrysler Center. Tom Crawford will be there as UMass Lowell, the Riverhawks, come to town. And Michigan figures again to be without Isaiah Livers for that one, precautionary reasons, but we'll see. Maybe it'll be a quick recovery here and he'll be ready to play. In best case scenario for Michigan, that will be the case. And then again, it's onward and upward to East Lansing Sunday, January 5th. Of course, we'll have a lot more on that game between now and then, a game that'll be televised on CBS. Along with Bluebelly Tom Crawford, I'm Ryan Schuling. You're listening to the Great Lakes Divide podcast, and it's brought to you each and every time out by the Record Lounge in Rio Town. Occasional video features that Tom shoots from there will show you inside the Record Lounge. Expanded space. They have new frontage there at the Rio Town Marketplace. It's on Washington, south from 496, downtown Lansing. On the east side of the street, they've got parking. You can park right out in front, walk right in. Very low-pressure sales situation. Look for what you want. If you can't find it, they have very helpful personnel there from Heather on down throughout her entire staff that are willing and ready and very enthusiastic to help you find what you need. Those hard to find items, collectibles, they're always on the lookout for those. They can special order them for you as well within a 24 to 48 hour turnaround. And again, you can find them on Facebook. Be sure to like them there. All the latest albums that come in, Heather shoots these short videos and it'll show you those. And again, if you're doing that last minute holiday shopping, you're hearing my voice right now, you can stop in there. They'll be open Monday, and you can give them a look. And again, question them online. Send her a direct message. She'll be happy to help you out. That's the Record Lounge in Rio Town. Turning now finally to our bowl preview. It's been a while since we talked in depth about the gridiron and football in Michigan State. We'll start there with a new Era Pinstripe Bowl from Yankee Stadium in the Bronx. Spartans anywhere from 3.5 to 4-point favorites over the Wake Forest Demon Deacons, who are 8-4 on the season. Spartans sneak into the bowl picture with a kind of pulling it out of the fire win over Maryland at home in that final game. It'll be a 3:20 Eastern start on ESPN, and that's coming up on Friday, this Friday, December 27th. Now, looking at the numbers and the tail of the tape, and Wake Forest did not have as strong of a finish to the season as they had a start, but this is a very good offense. And Tom, we'll start there. You know, the ACC, I don't even know what to make of this conference overall below Clemson because it just was so far down. You know, this is a Wake Forest team that earlier in the season beat a decent Utah State team, and then throughout conference play, you know, had their struggles, especially defensively, giving up 62 points to Louisville, 52 to Clemson, and even 39 in overtime in a loss at Syracuse. Not a very good Syracuse team, I might add. Their most impressive win probably at home against NC State, 44-10. But Wake Forest has lost 3 of their final 4 games. Their only win, a home victory over Duke. Just kind of a cursory read on this matchup here, Tom, and what you expect Michigan State to face in Wake Forest.
Well, yeah, I mean, you nailed it on the ACC. I mean, you take Clemson away, the ACC is like, that's like matchup with them. That might even be below the MAC.
Oh, wow.
To be quite honest, I'm not trying to embellish their in a negative way, but it's not a very good league. And but you know, with Wake Forest, I saw a part of that Syracuse game, and Syracuse is not a very good team. The fact they lost that game really said a lot. The Utah State game, I think, that's the most quality win right there because that's typically a good team, and even though they lost their bowl game to a MAC team last night, so I mean that maybe they're not that good, but I think that they'll be able to move the ball against Michigan State. And when we get to the prediction phase, I'm pretty confident, and I'm going to pick. I'll just say it right now. I think Wake Forest is going to win this game 24-20 because I think Michigan State's offense is not very good. It's just not very good, and I just think the conditions It's probably going to be this baseball field, and who knows what they're going to be dealing with on that particular turf. Although Michigan State is used to playing on natural grass, but not much atmosphere. And I think maybe Wake might be more determined. I don't know, but I got Wake in this game 24-20, beating Michigan State.
I could see where you're coming from, Tom, and everything about this game makes me want to pick Wake Forest. They're number 12 offensively, and they've got a dual-threat quarterback. I look at the offense, and again, you have to take into account the level of competition, but this is a quarterback in Jamie Newman who's got experience as a junior, a decent completion percentage at 62.3. He's the team's third leading rusher, and again, in college football, they take into account sack yardage against rushing yardage gain, but Newman can move. He's mobile, and that can be a problem for Michigan State. We've seen it throughout this season against guys, let's say, like a Michael Penix from Indiana when he was healthy. But he does have 6 rushing touchdowns, Newman, the quarterback, on the season for Wake Forest. They've got a pretty good 1-2 punch at running back with Cade Carney, the more experienced runner, and then a freshman as well in Kenneth Walker. And this is the guy I'm going to keep my eye on. He's averaging 6.2 yards per carry and has just about as many yards, just one fewer yard in 53 fewer carries than Carney has. So Walker, the freshman, let's see if he gets the lion's share back there. And not to mention, Wake Forest has a pair of near 1,000-yard receivers. Sage Surratt is over that mark with 1,001 yards, 11 touchdowns. Who's going to be the primary cover on Sage Surratt? This is a guy that, again, is going to be a matchup problem. And then they've got Kendall Hinton, another wide receiver. This guy with a team-high 70 catches for 953 yards. And this is where I have my greatest concern for Michigan State, is on the corner. Can Josiah Scott stay with the top receiver for Wake Forest? And is he going to be locked in one-on-one against a guy like we see? And, throughout this game, we'll continue to see, whether or not Wake Forest is able to put the ball up through the air, get that kind of production over the top, and Michigan State's got to be able to limit them. I think the conditions that Tom touched on might factor in, and when we're recording this, don't know the weather exactly, but you look at the running game and what Michigan State has to be able to do in controlling the clock and extending drives, Elijah Collins, scripted drives. I mean, this offense is singing for its supper right now. Brian Lewerke, this will be his swan song. And for Michigan State, they've got to find an identity on offense, and they're still looking for that. And in the wake of everything that's happened this season, the potential coaching changes that we might see or might not see on the offensive side of the ball, this is the last chance for the Spartans to really make a statement. I think getting to this bowl game meant something to them. The program win hats notwithstanding for MSU and that rather lackluster win over Maryland, I think they find a way to get the job done. I don't know why. I'm picking more, I guess, with my gut in this than anything, Tom. But I'll take Wake Forest to cover. I'm kind of weaseling my way through the back door here. I'll take Michigan State to win, but 20-17, that does not cover the 3.5 or 4 points for Wake. So you and I both have Wake Forest covering. We both have the score right around the 20-point mark, and I think that's going to be indicative of how this game is played. If it gets up and away, and this gets to be ACC shootout-type territory, I don't necessarily expect that will happen in the Bronx in January and December here. But for Michigan State, it's going to be, can they kind of control the line of scrimmage on both sides of the ball, and particularly for me up front on defense. And I do think they have the horses to get that job done. Be very interested to see how Kenny Willekes goes out in this game, his final game as a Spartan.
Yeah, the other element is when we talked last, and I always have these glaring optics. I saw Michigan State, I watched them replay the game when they get Maryland, and they just didn't look very good against a really bad Maryland team. But since that time, to me, it sounds like, just from a distance, that the Michigan State coaching staff is a little bit more solidified than when we were visiting that topic, right after that game. It sounds like to me, Mark D'Antonio is definitely coming back. Obviously, that's even nailed down even more. And the other element is, I don't think there's going to be any coaching changes. And I think players might be comfortable with that, at least a majority of them, because most players don't like change. They get comfortable and they don't want change. And so I think that might work for Michigan State, but still, that secondary of Michigan State, that's just a variable out there. And then Michigan State's offense is so inconsistent, and Lewerke can look so bad at times, even in his final year.
So we'll take a look and see what happens as Michigan State, again, playing Friday. That'll be in the afternoon, 3:20 Eastern kickoff, ESPN with a televised coverage against the Wake Forest Demon Deacons, the new Era Pinstripe Bowl from the Bronx and Yankee Stadium in New York. And again, Michigan State, anywhere if you're looking at the books, from a 3.5 to a 4-point favorite in this one. Tom's got Wake Forest winning 24-20. I got Michigan State winning but not covering at 20-17. Final thought on this bowl game, and I want to go back to something you just said, because Tom, I can't really process this. I can't process that one season after Mark D'Antonio stands fast and stands by his guys, his offensive coaches, all of his coaches, makes no changes over the last offseason. We see basically the same results, a middling to mediocre team with a below-average offense. The thought or the notion that not only does Mark D'Antonio come back, and that's his call, and he's got a legacy at Michigan State, I don't necessarily disagree with that, but that there wouldn't be any pressure, any focus, any leaning on him by anybody, including himself, to reform or remake this offense in some way. Do you really believe that Mark D'Antonio, from a public relations standpoint, from a season ticket holder standpoint, from the alumni donation standpoint, all of these political factors, can survive an off-season coming back by just flouting the fans, the will of the people, so to speak, and saying, nah, you know what, we're good, we're going to stay with the guys we have, even though our offense stinks on ice? How can he justify that at this point?
Yes, and yes. It's called empowerment, Ryan. I mean, at Michigan State right now, from the athletic director standpoint, from the whole administrative level, I mean, Mark D'Antonio, accountability resides just within himself. And I think he's confident he can get the job done next year. There might be some minor tweaks. We don't know that. There might be some different scheme approaches, offensively, defensively. But I'm hearing from multiple sources, there's going to be minimal, if not any, coaches changes going on with that staff.
Wow.
And I might be wrong on that, but there might. I don't know. I'm trying to think. Like, for example, Don Treadwell. Actually, and I haven't talked to Don. He's a friend of mine, but I would never approach him on that topic. Just to get some editorial things here. I'll just let him do what he's going to do. But, he's about 62, 63. Maybe he's been in coaching for a long 40 years. Some of these coaches, you think, I've done my thing, and maybe it's time to move on. I don't know if Treadwell leave or anybody else, but I don't think they're going to leave being forced out. Mark D'Antonio believes in that program. He believes in himself, and the leadership at Michigan State is allowing Mark D'Antonio to do what Mark D'Antonio wants, and I can't even fathom that not being the case.
So we'll see how it plays out. I think this is a kind of a working audition for this offensive line for Michigan State, for which many of these guys will be coming back. Nick Samak up front, the freshman. Devontae Dobbs, hopefully going to be able to, go for major minutes in this game. A.J.R. Curry is a redshirt junior. Every one of these guys that you're looking at maybe coming back next year, and how do they reinforce that talent with a recruiting class that's coming in? It takes time to build an offensive line. It takes time for offensive linemen to blossom into what they're going to be. And Michigan State in the past has been very good at that. In recent years, however, they've had injuries up front, they've had attrition up front, and they've just had, I think, stalling out in development up front. And this has been a major area of focus and concern for an MSU offense that cannot protect the quarterback, that cannot block for the run, and against a Wake Forest defense that isn't that great. If they're stymied the way that they were against Maryland in large regard, I mean, this is going to be a glaring red flag going forward. A bowl game that I think is as important for Michigan State as any in recent memory that wasn't really for anything, on a national scale. It's hard to kind of equate this to any other bowl game they've played under Mark D'Antonio in the past, because they barely got into this one. I think they're thankful to be there. I think it means something for them to be there. And whether or not they win, I think is going to go a long way in terms of the taste that's left in the mouth, Tom, of Michigan State fans in this offseason, and how willing they're going to be able to accept these changes or lack thereof from Michigan State heading into the 2020 season.
Boy, you nailed it. There's two mile markers in a season that are critical for the word hope, but fans want hope. One is obviously winning a bowl game, and I probably overstate it, but I truly believe it. Winning a bowl game not only gives great momentum for the program, but the players and your offseason workouts, but for the fans, because that's the last visual they see is a win, okay? The other element is recruiting. And Michigan State just finished their, the early signing period, which is basically the signing period in the Big Ten. And 11th or 12th in the Big Ten, depending on the platform. nationally anywhere from mid-30s to 42-1 for 24/7. That doesn't give fans hope and excitement about reordering their season tickets for the 2020 campaign.
And that's really the only way a message is going to be delivered by these fans is to stand up and say, look, we demand change. And that comes from the big alumni donors as well. And as long as there's no pressure coming from any direction on head coach Mark D'Antonio, what impetus is there really for him to change anything other than his own self-reflection and coming to terms with the fact that they don't have the answers they need or the horses they need on offense to compete at the highest level in the Big Ten anymore. It just isn't there. And we've seen case evidence of this in 3 of the past 4 seasons, with 2017 and that Holiday Bowl win looking more and more like the outlier that it is on paper. So again, Michigan State, Wake Forest, in that new Era Pinstripe Bowl. We'll keep tabs on this, have a recap for you a week from today with our reflective podcast as we head into calendar year 2020. How about that? Now, to the Citrus Bowl, Michigan, Alabama, 2 big-name programs going head-to-head, 2 big personality coaches in Nick Saban and Jim Harbaugh, who have had their loggerheads in the past, most notably about the satellite camps. Let's start there, Tom, and your thoughts on Nick Saban, who really made a big deal about that, and the SEC did as well. Jim Harbaugh kind of raiding into the South, carpetbagger that he is, staging these satellite camps in Florida and elsewhere, and trying to kind of rip into SEC recruiting territory. What did you think of Nick Saban's reaction at the time? And what do you think of Jim Harbaugh's approach to recruiting, where he really doesn't give a damn what anybody else thinks?
Well, now how long ago was that? A few years ago. I think that's not going to be an issue for this game. There's other issues that are going to decide this outcome. In fact, I think Nick Saban's pretty happy with his recruiting class. He got 20 of the top 300. Are you kidding me? And he's a top 2 or 3, whatever platform you're looking at. So I think that was, overstated at the time, and it's definitely in the rearview mirror right now. But Michigan looks at recruiting from a national standpoint. You have to. State of Michigan high school football is not all that good, and then you're sharing it with another. You're fighting over it with another major institution 63 miles away. So Michigan's doing what's best interest for them. Is the fact they are a national school. They're not a regional school. Half of their student body, for example, is 50-50. And their football program recruiting is going nationwide. So, I think that was a big story, a cute little story, because you need a story in the springtime to satisfy college football fans. It's not even going to be an issue, I don't think, as we head into the Citrus Bowl. There's other glaring issues that are determining that outcome.
New Year's Day, of course, 1 p.m. Eastern Time kickoff on ABC. Number 13, Alabama. Number 14, Michigan. Both teams got it handed to them in their final games, their rivalry games. For Michigan, of course, it was the 56-27 loss to Ohio State. For Alabama, the Iron Bowl, they lost that one at Auburn, 48-45. And if there's kind of a ray of light here for Michigan and what I look for from Alabama, this is not a typical Alabama defense. In large regard, Tom, against the 2 best teams they've played, LSU and Auburn. They've allowed 46 and 48 points, respectively. On the road against Texas A&M, they allowed 28. This is a team, again, varying matchups throughout the year. Not a lot of big names on Alabama's schedule, but the ones that they faced, those teams have been able to move the ball and score against them. Alabama has a decent defense. I wouldn't consider them to be elite. And for Michigan on offense, let's start there and where they pick up and what they were doing against Ohio State. What they were doing really for the second half of the season, we kind of marked that second half of the Penn State game where everything kind of turned for this Michigan offense that had been mostly maligned. Shea Patterson looking to go out on a high note. All of the seniors, it appears, are going to be playing. It looks like Michigan has just a different feel, different look in their eye. Maybe it's the opponent that's got them keyed up for this one, Tom, but it doesn't seem like, again, Jim Harbaugh struggled in these bowl games to get his team prepared and motivated. That's going to be a problem here.
Oh, motivation is not going to be a problem. A thing called talent disparity is going to be the problem. The problem with this game, Ryan, is this. It's not so much Michigan being able to run the ball against or to move the ball against Alabama and score. Here's a stat line to look at. If Michigan doesn't have to punt in this game, they got a chance of winning. Anything less than that, they're going to get blown out. And I'm going to tell you why. Because I think Michigan can score 21, 24, 28 points. They might even score 30 points. But when Alabama has a football with Jerry Jeudy and those 4 NFL receivers, an offensive line that can pass pro as good as any in the country, You got Najee Harris, a good running back, and Mac Jones, a good enough thrower. He can throw deep with that line protection and those receivers. I mean, Michigan's going to have to score 42 points minimal to win this game. Minimal. And I'm thinking I'm being really conservative in that because Alabama's offense could potentially hang 56, 63 points, who knows how many, against this Michigan defense.
And that's the rub, because this Alabama offense, even without Tua Tagliavola, is with Mac Jones. Again, this guy's completed nearly 70% of his passes. He's a solid quarterback. He's got great protection. Tom pointed out he's got 4 receivers. I mean, pick your poison there. Devontae Smith is chief among them, of course, with 1,200 yards, 13 touchdowns. But Jerry Jeudy, a name most people recognize out there, team high, 71 catches, just shy of 1,000 yards, 9 touchdowns in his own right. Oh, by the way, Henry Ruggs has 7 TDs on the season, 719 yards. Jalen Waddle, another name you're going to have to keep an eye out for. Najee Harris can catch the ball out of the backfield. He's got 7 receiving touchdowns, and not to mention, he's a 1,000-yard rusher on the season as a bell cow back in the truest form. We've seen it before, going back into the past, whether it's Derrick Henry or Mark Ingram. Harris is that type of back and that type of mold, averaging about 6 yards per carry and has 11 touchdowns on the season. So you couldn't be more right, Tom, in this offensive attack. It's an embarrassment of riches, and much the same concern that I have for Michigan State on a much smaller scale against a team like Wake Forest is the secondary, the matchups that we're going to see on the corners against receivers, what type of defensive scheme that they come out with. Don Brown, I mean, they couldn't stop Ohio State, and Alabama's as good or better offensively, at least I think, than Ohio State is overall in terms of talent across the board. So this Michigan secondary, I mean, what are we going to look for? Lavert Hill going to be challenged to the max, Ambry Thomas, the safeties, Josh Metellus, Brad Hawkins. Are we going to see a lot of nickel looks? Are we going to drop linebackers in coverage? I mean, how does Don Brown attack this when you talk about a talent discrepancy that there's only so much you can do?
Well, I don't care if you run press, zone. I don't care what you do. It doesn't matter, because the problem is Michigan's defensive line is undersized, especially relative to Alabama. And so, are you going to get Aiden Hutchinson or Josh Uche, providing any quarterback pressures against Mac Jones? I don't see it, Ryan. And then the other thing is, I think you're going to get even more significant push against Alabama's offensive line against Michigan's undersized D-line. That's a recruiting need, and I think maybe it was fulfilled a little bit, but they have got to address that and get a more physical defensive line. Michigan does, I'm talking about, because I just shudder that matchup of Bama offense against Michigan defense, and I'm talking at all 3 levels. I'm talking D-line, I'm talking about linebacking core with the shallow crossers, and then I'm talking about that secondary where I can Josh Metellus had let Chris Olave get behind him in the Ohio State game, and I'm seeing that happen again, obviously against Alabama. If it's a nice weather day, which typically it is in Orlando on January 1, that would just be the perfect storm for just a wrecking crew of Alabama's offense against Michigan's defense.
Alabama has the number 7 overall offense, 2 spots below Ohio State in overall yardage per game, and Michigan with the number 6 rated defense. But we've seen the cracks in the veneer there, if you will, against teams that can throw the football on the perimeter. Is that the thing that scares you the most about Alabama? I mean, there's a lot of things that concern you, Tom, but their ability to stretch the field, and even with Mac Jones at quarterback, with the talent they have at receiver, to make those big plays vertically down the field.
Oh yeah, I mean they can stretch it off, horizontally. Yeah, it's going vert. I mean these guys go 4 vert. They call 4 guys going streak routes. I mean, my God, these are all NFL bound receivers. I promise you, they will all be in the NFL. They will all be household names in the NFL. And back to Alabama's defense. Yeah, 2 of their top players are not playing in this game. That's fine, okay? And that will help Michigan's offense even more. But once again, how can he keep up with it from a match play? And it's like a tennis match. Are you going to score a major score every possession? That's what it's going to take.
Alabama has the number 36 rated rush defense, and this is the one kind of angle that if Michigan can establish the run, we've talked about this in the past, and whether or not they've been able to do it and sustain it, eat clock, long, time-consuming drives, just keep the ball out of Alabama's hands. I think for the Wolverines, their best defense might be their own offense. I think Hassan Haskins is strong in that regard, and for a Michigan offensive line that has played relatively well, especially later in the season, that's not been the problem for the Wolverines in finding holes. Zach Charbonnet, obviously a name that's going to jump out at you there. But for Michigan, is ball control the name in the game here, Tom? Because you're right, they don't want to get into an arms race like nuclear war here against Alabama and try to outscore them. They're not going to be able to do that. So if Michigan can run the football, establish that, keep that going, how confident are you that they can do that, one, and two, that would keep them in the game?
Well, obviously, I mean, absolutely, that ball control, that's a really valid point. But part of Michigan's problems this year, and there was a void where it wasn't an issue in the middle of the season, but turnovers. And we saw that flip the Michigan-Ohio State game performance. Michigan was doing really well, in terms of offense efficiency. And what does Shea Patterson do? He muffs a snap, and all of a sudden it flipped that game on a dime. That with another mistake on an offsides by Cleek Hudson on a critical third down. Once again, that added to the onslaught, and all of a sudden all bets are off. That's the thing that I fear. First of all, no punts for Michigan. Maybe I'm going overboard there, but very few times. I'll just say that one or two times. The other thing, they can't turn the ball over once to compete in this game, let alone ball control. And I'm not trying to make it that Alabama's is just superb juggernaut. I mean, it's Alabama-esque like other teams are. But Michigan's defense, I just don't have confidence with them against a big, physical, SEC caliber defense. I have the same feeling right in this game that I did in 2001 when Michigan went against Tennessee. Jason Whitlock, was that the guy was at the tight end for the Cowboys was on that team?
Oh, Jason Witten.
With Jason Witten, yeah. Jason Witten was on that team. It was a national caliber team. This is how I feel up against this Alabama team. Yeah, they're not in the playoff hunt, but they're that good. And I have that same feeling, and that was a blowout.
Well, I look back on Michigan State against Alabama in bowl games, and I'm having the same kind of feeling. There was the Capital One Bowl. You go back to 2011, where Alabama just rolled Michigan State. It was a atypical down year for Nick Saban and the Crimson Tide. They won that game 49-7. That was a really good Michigan State team as well that went into that game. I'm getting a similar vibe here. I don't think it'll be that big of a blowout. I mean, maybe I'm just being optimistic from Michigan's standpoint, but I'm with you on a couple things, Tom. Michigan can't punt at all, really. I mean, they've got to be able to hold on to the ball and get productive drives. They can't have turnovers like killed them against Ohio State. Anything they hand Alabama, the Crimson Tide are going to turn around and make blow up right in their face. But if I look at this game, I'll offer my prediction first. Michigan, again, ground game control, looking to slow down an offense that hasn't been slowed down a lot this season. They have surrendered points, Alabama, and I think Michigan will score their fair share. Alabama, 7-point favorite from Camping World Stadium in Orlando for this Citrus Bowl, and I'll take them to cover and win, but maybe not by as big of a margin as a lot of people might be fearing out there. I got the Crimson Tide 38, Wolverines 28. Tom, your final score prediction and why?
Well, the reason I said Michigan's going to have to score 42 points minimum, because I'll just say Alabama conservatively will score 41. I got Alabama 41, Michigan 24, a 17-point margin. I think Michigan's going to compete for 2.5 quarters, but midway through the third, they're going to make a mistake. It's going to flip the game, and then all bets are off. And I wrote one more note on this game, though. Betting is going to be legal now in the state of Michigan.
Oh yeah.
Oh my God! If I had money to spend, that point spread, it's shocking. How that thing isn't going up, I don't know, in Vegas. I guess there's just a lot of love-goggled Michigan fans that bet on their team for the sake of betting on their team.
That's what happens. That I've talked about that with guys that are expert sharps out there before, Tom, on my old radio program, and that's what it is. It's a lot of Michigan fans betting with their hearts, and they have the money to do it. I know that you are not going to do that.
No, I'm not going to do it. I don't bet, but my God, this one would be tempting. And so, 41-24 and regroup and try to, that'd be 4 straight bowl games. It would be a bad loss. It would be a PR nightmare again, which continues on for Jim Harbaugh. And the program would just have to continue to challenge itself or just accept who it is. I don't know. But moving forward, not a really positive vibe from Michigan fans. I talked to a lot of Michigan football fans yesterday down at Chrysler, a few of them. They're not excited about the bowl game, and they're not excited about 2020 either. So even though they had a top 10, top 11 recruiting class, that doesn't mean anything to them right now.
A couple more things here, Tom, on Michigan before I let you go. And the first being the bowl game situation with Jim Harbaugh and Michigan. He won his first bowl game in his first season, the Citrus. And if they lose against Alabama in this Citrus Bowl, that would be 4 straight bowl losses. And more importantly to me, they haven't really shown up in a lot of these bowl losses. It hasn't been a Michigan team that you look at and go, yeah, they're sharp. They came ready to play. They were prepared in this month they had to build up for this game. And my question to you is, if they lose big against Alabama, what kind of rumblings and grumblings will there be among the Michigan fan base about, hey, if Jim Harbaugh can't get his team ready for a bowl game like this, how is he ever going to be ready for a Big Ten championship game, for a Rose Bowl, for a playoff game, to be able to come prepared to one of those?
Well, I don't care how much they're rumbling. It doesn't matter. I mean, he's going to be the head football coach at Michigan, at least to fulfill his 7-year contract. I mean, there's just no question in my mind he's not going to be fired, and I don't think he's going to leave. So it's just, I think there's part of an acceptance mode right now for Michigan fans. It is what it is, and I think part of the fact is when you have Ohio State getting another top 3 class. When Michigan gets 9 out of the top 300, and all the other Power 5 schools, talking about Bama, LSU, Clemson, Ohio State, you can even throw Auburn in there, maybe even Georgia, even go 6. When they all get 15, 16, 17, and in Bama's case, 20 of the top 300, and you're sitting there at 9, and you're looked upon as pretty good. I mean, that whole gap in talent between Michigan, Penn State, and then Ohio State is getting cavernously larger. And I think everybody's at acceptance stage. They're never going to get to Indy in the foreseeable future because Ohio State keeps churning along an SEC caliber of talent.
Final note here, Tom, and that is the entering of the transfer portal by Tariq Black, the wide receiver junior for Michigan, who will not be playing in this game, will be going elsewhere. As you look at the wide receiver depth that's been a strength for Michigan this season, sophomore Ronnie Bell, the juniors, Nico Collins, DPJ, Giles Jackson, and Mike Sanders still have broken through as freshmen as well. Was this just a numbers game? Do you understand Tariq Black's decision to leave? And further to that point, does Donovan Peoples-Jones consider entering NFL draft a year earlier, or are all these guys, besides Black, of course, coming back for 2020?
Well, I think DPJ might leave, but I hate to say receivers are a dime a dozen, but for Michigan, I mean, their top recruit coming into this, AJ Henning, is a solid 4-star receiver, and all the names that you cited coming back, Mike Sanders still, and obviously, Giles Jackson. I mean, there's enough talent there. I don't think that's their issue next year. So I think Tariq Black got frustrated earlier in the year, and I kind of saw that coming. He got injured his freshman year. It was kind of he had a quick jump out of the gate with that touchdown pass against Florida down at AT&T. His first game as a freshman, and never really took off from there. And an injury had a lot to do with that.
So once again, the 2 bowl games coming up: Michigan State, Wake Forest, New Era Pinstripe Bowl, 3:20 p.m. Eastern Time start. That'll be coming up on this Friday, December 27th from the Bronx Yankee Stadium in New York. Tom and I both have Wake Forest covering. Tom's got Wake winning straight up 24-20. I've got the Spartans winning, but not covering the 3.5 or 4-point spread. 20-17 Spartans. I'm going with my gut there, and I don't know, maybe my heart a little bit. But for Michigan, Alabama, number 14 Wolverines, number 13 Crimson Tide. Again, a 1 p.m. kickoff. ABC will have the coverage from Orlando in the Citrus Bowl on New Year's Day. I've got Alabama winning 38-28, covering the 7-point spread. Tom feels that spread is low. I think it is as well. And Tom's got Alabama winning 41-24 by that 17-point margin. So a little bit of coal in the stocking, perhaps, for both Michigan and Michigan State fans if it's up to Tom Crawford. But despite that fact, Tom, I want to wish you, Tina, your entire family a very Merry Christmas and Happy New Year. We'll be having best ofs over these next 2 editions of the Great Lakes Divide podcast. We'll be back for you to recap the bowl games, including Michigan's Citrus Bowl game against Alabama. Take a look ahead at the national championship matchup, whatever that is, and that'll be coming up after the new year once 2020 flips from 2019. So, Tom, enjoy the holidays. May they be safe and merry for you and your family, and always enjoy doing this program with you as always.
Well, you as well, Ryan. This has been such a rush, a fun thing that, Great Lakes Divide. And, hey, the back end of 2019 has been terrific. I'm really looking forward to 2020 with Big Ten basketball looming. Our 2 teams going at it the first Sunday in January. What fun lies ahead for both of us.
And we'll have a preview of that game in our next updated podcast coming up for you, and some best of reflective interviews looking back at the past. How about some conversations with John U. Bacon, Sean Windsor, the Detroit Free Press, Ed Sherman, author of This Is Big. Plenty of those to look forward to and look back upon as you're sipping your eggnog, and maybe it's loaded like mine will be in addition. For Bluebelly Tom Crawford, I'm Ryan Schuling. Once again, our podcast is brought to you each and every time out by the Record Lounge in Rio Town. You heard Jingle Bells by Michael Bublé coming in. Going out, how about the Christmas song by the Monkees? And Heather wants to remind you that they're open for last-minute shoppers. That's Sunday 12 to 3, Monday 12 to 4. Tuesday they'll be open 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. They'll be closed Christmas Day and back to normal hours for the 26th. Now, the last day for orders to come in for Tuesday delivery is Monday. So if you want to come in, if you want to contact Heather Ferrari, you can do so. Facebook's a good way to do that. Like their page there. And Heather wants to remind everybody to have a Merry Christmas from Heather at the Record Lounge, where music is the best gift to give. Our thanks to them, our thanks to you, and may you have a safe and happy and joyous Festivus, Christmas, Hanukkah, whatever you celebrate out there, and a Happy New Year to all of you as well.
Chestnuts roasting on an open fire, Jack Frost nipping at your nose, Yuletide carols being sung by a choir, and folks dressed up like Eskimos. Everybody knows a turkey and some mistletoe help to make the season bright. Tiny tots with their eyes all